This is the RNC Podcast, episode 1. In this podcast, I'll be telling you a little bit about myself and my opinions on the outcome of the UFC 261 event, Masvidal Usman 2, as well as the next event, Reyes vs. Prochazke, including who I think will win in the main card of that event. Hi guys, my name is Imi, short for Imran. I am a fan of combat sports. I don't actually care whether it's real or not. I just like it all. I've trained in combat sports since I was 5, which gives me about 30 years. With that 30 years, I generally know what I'm looking at. I've trained in traditional martial arts, I've trained in MMA, so I have a good gist of what I'm looking at. Or at least so I think. Okay, so let's get on to the meat and potatoes. UFC 261. What a card. Amazing. The crowd gave it something that it hasn't had for the last year. Just that energy. That energy obviously got to the fighters as well. From top to bottom, amazing. So in this podcast, I'm just going to pay attention to the main card, starting with Smith versus Crute. Now, initially, I didn't have very much of an opinion on this. Smith has kind of been on a downward roll and Crute has kind of been on an upward trajectory. Initially, if I was going to be pressed, I would have probably said Smith would have won. He's got the experience and Crute is kind of fairly new, even though Smith hasn't been having a good time of it lately. What I didn't expect was Crute's knees to give out. But the tenacity in that guy, god damn, he was still going for it even when his knees went. He was still going for it even when they told him he couldn't come out for round 2. It's been a week later and we still haven't got no information on what's actually happened to Crute because he's in isolation. Hopefully he gets better, but for Smith, a win's a win. And in my opinion, I think he should be trying to get to that title that he's only been fingertips away from before. There's no John Jones blocking his path now. As for Crute, he's just going to firstly need to recover and get to a point where he can be back to 100%. After that, the next fight was Hall versus Weidman. Only one thing can be said about this. One shot thrown, and that happened to be from the person who just broke himself. There was so much power behind that kick, but that little check by Hall, and it was a little check because if you look at it in the slow-mo, you can see him lean into it just a little bit. But the way Weidman's leg just wrapped around. Swings and roundabouts is all I can say about that. Swings and roundabouts. Again, hopefully Weidman recovers from that, but I don't think there's going to be much of a comeback after that. Even Anderson was tentative when he came back. He was very gun shy. What do you expect? His leg wrapped around another man's leg, and he was the one attacking. All credit to Hall, though. That man took that interview afterwards like a professional. Hopefully, his stock has gone up with that and he gets closer to the title. Yeah, he has that little wobbler with his mental state, but maybe in this run he can get to it. Only problem is Adesanya is there, and Adesanya is no joke. You're gonna need something special to beat Adesanya. On to Shevchenko versus Andrade. Now, I have no idea why they put Andrade in this. There's nobody gonna beat my girl Shevchenko. Nobody. I'm pretty sure Andrade had to come up a weight class for this as well. She was outclassed everywhere. Everywhere. The thing is, the difference was big. Shevchenko made her look like an amateur. And Andrade ain't an amateur. She's former champion. But still, that difference in level. Oh my days. I don't know who's next for Shevchenko, because there ain't anybody in her weight class that's going to take anything soon. Just going to be payday fights for her. I mean, who's going to beat her, really? There's only Nunez, really, that's on the horizon. And she's in a different weight class. I mean, she's cleaned out her own weight class, or at least the upper one. It's going to be so difficult finding another opponent for her. After that, we get on to Zhang versus Rose. Now, in this one, I initially thought Zhang would have won. It was more along the lines of, though Rose has the footwork, Zhang has the power and the bullishness. And I was thinking Zhang would have taken it because she has to get it right once, where Rose would have had to get it right every single time. Well, how wrong I was. Rose gave Zhang air miles with that high kick. I'm pretty sure she lifted her off the floor because she came down hard. It's such a clean shot to the face as well. That left high kick, damn. I wasn't a fan of Rose's pre-fight gimmick, but hey, I mean, when that cage door closed, what can you say? Absolutely nothing, because she took that belt. Now, for some reason, they're looking about doing a rematch, which I find odd considering it's not like it was close, or one person switched off the other person and took it from them. But I figure the UFC wants that China market money, so need to get it back on Zhang as quick as possible. I don't think it was going to happen, not after what we've just seen. I mean, Zhang had some bad habits there, even though they were correct for what she was thinking was going to happen. She just got outskilled via unpredictability. Maybe Andrade will come back down and fight Rose again and try to win the belt that way again. Anyway, the main event, Usman versus Masvidal. Now, this one I had Usman for purely because of the last time they met. Masvidal just wasn't keeping up, and yes, 6 days, fine, great. Thing is, Usman's levels of wrestling, his hands since then, and it kind of showed. I mean, if we forget about the KO for the moment, you can see earlier on in the fight, he was touching Masvidal, and Masvidal was doing what a lot of people do in sparring and fighting. When they get tagged, they do that little smile and a nod. It's like, oh yeah, you got me. And Usman was getting him quite a lot. I mean, there's only so much you can block with your face before you go down. And don't get me wrong, I am a Masvidal fan, but this was just a lot different from what he would have expected from the last one, from the first time they met. There was hardly any wrestling in this. It was a firefight pretty much from the get-go. But that KO that he did, where Usman pulled down that protecting lead arm, I think it was, and followed straight through with his right. I mean, everything was behind that right. He practically jumped forward with that. And the photos, the water, the sweat just spraying everywhere. That's going to be something that people put up on their walls. The UFC are currently looking to give Colby the next title shot, which, sure, okay, if you want his face to be broken again. I mean, the problem Colby has is Usman's at the top. His hands are better. He does the same thing you do. I mean, what are you going to do? The same thing as before. It's not going to happen. Personally, I would have put Leon Edwards in there, but he's been taken up with the Nick Diaz matchup. So, hey, the only person left is Colby or Stephen Thompson. I think they probably won't give it to Stephen Thompson purely because he hasn't had anything in recent months, so they kind of probably just try to force Stephen's hand by giving it to Colby. But I think that might be a more interesting matchup, Usman versus Stephen Thompson. One guy who wrestles really heavily and another one who's super elusive. That I would have find very interesting. So on to tonight. There is a UFC Fight Night, I think it is, with Reyes versus Prochazke. Now, I don't actually know Prochazke, but I do know Reyes. Anyway, main card predictions for it. First match appears to be Merab Davashvili versus Cody Stamann. And I think Davashvili might take this. He seems to be on a tear right now. And that camp seems to be doing very well. So my first prediction will be on that side for this. Second fight of the main card is Sean Strickland versus Krzysztof Jotko. Now, if I remember correctly, Jotko has been doing fairly well of late, so I'm going to go on the Jotko side. I know Sean Strickland is pretty sure he's been around for a while and he is pretty solid, but I think the movement of Jotko is going to take this. Third fight of the card, Kutalabe versus Jacoby. Kutalabe's had a hard time recently. I mean, he had that first weird stoppage and then the full-on loss to Ankalaev. So, I mean, damn, that's going to be a difficult one. I'm going to go with Jacoby. I think Kutalabe is going to be a little bit too aggressive and might get caught. I mean, he's got a point to prove and he has to really prove it in this one to stop becoming a gatekeeper. Co-main, Chikadze and Swanson. Oh, as much as I want to say Swanson, I think this is going to be Chikadze because Swanson, I mean, MMA terms, is an old man. Chikadze is the new kid on the block. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you can only be here for so long and eventually you're just going to be the guy that people use to get their name out. And I think this is going to be one of those ones. So I got Chikadze. And the main event, Reyes versus Prochazke. Oh, man. Reyes has not been doing too well, and I think this is Prochazke's second fight in the UFC. I mean, the first one, he just KO'd Ozdemir. Now, I'm going to have to go with Reyes. I mean, I know he's been on a downward streak, but I'm thinking experience beats excitement. I figure he's new and excited to be in the UFC, but I think the experience of Reyes is probably going to take it. I mean, if it doesn't, Reyes is going to be in serious trouble in terms of getting that belt. Anyway, guys, that is the end of episode 1 of the RNC podcast. This is the first one. I'm just winging it, so hopefully I'll be able to refine it a little bit more when I've done it a few more times and then get something a bit more structured out to you. I won't be watching the fight night live, but I will be watching it on the repeats because 3 a.m. not happening. That's a silly hour for us in the UK. But when I do, I'll make another little short podcast on it and my opinions on what I saw, what I thought, and what will be coming next. Anyway, have a good evening.